Did we lose Elwood?
Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting, 4:30 p.m., Thursday, August 26, 2021. First item will be the approval of the minutes of the July 29th, 2021 meeting. Is any?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'd second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. Any discussion on the minutes from the July 29th meeting? Everybody signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 3 is a public hearing to consider the application of Olson and Hobby Architecture, LLC, on behalf of Martin Luther College, requesting a variance to allow up to 1,545.5 square feet of exterior signage on the Betty Crone Fieldhouse on property zoned RA Agriculture Residence District at 1800 Beckner Road. Look for staff report.
Thanks. Legal description for this property is Lot A of the east half of the west half, Section 30, Township 110, Range 30, Brown County, Minnesota, except for the Bushard subdivision and Bushard second subdivision. Street address is 1800 Betker Road. The property location is generally located north of Oakwood Avenue, south of County State Aid Highway 27, and then west of Hollywood Boulevard. Deadline for this decision is September 12th, 2021. The land use designation, based on the city's comprehensive plan, designates this area as public or semi-public. The surrounding land uses to the north include low-density residential and park and open space. To the west, public and semi-public. To the east, low and medium-density residential, and then to the south, low-density residential. Again, the zoning designation for this property is the RA Agricultural Residence District. Surrounding zoning to the north is RA, R1 Single Family Residence District, then to the south and east, and then the city limits to the west, and then to the west, outside of the city limits, that's agricultural land. Current site use is open athletic fields, soccer fields, baseball and a softball field, and then a gravel parking area. Current area uses include Highland Park to the north, single-family residences to the south and east, agricultural fields, and the New Ulm Municipal Airport to the west. This application was noticed in the New Ulm Journal August 14th, 2021. To date, we have not received any comments from the public regarding this application. For the project description, Martin Luther College is proposing to place 2 large sign areas on the Betty Crone Fieldhouse that is currently under construction. These sign areas will be on the north and south walls of the fieldhouse. The fieldhouse being constructed on this site is a permitted use in the RA zoning district. The new signage being proposed would consist of 1 Betty Crone Fieldhouse MLC night logo and Lance's sign on the south wall of the fieldhouse. The end of this building will be the entrance to the fieldhouse and will be facing Oakwood Avenue. This sign area totals 752 square feet. Then there will be 1 additional MLC sign with Lance's on the north wall of the field house, and this sign area will face County State Aid Highway 27. and the sign area will be 778 square feet. So the total new sign area for this project would be 1,530 square feet. There's one existing sign on the property as you enter in off of Betcher Road, and that is a 15.5 square foot athletic fields entrance sign, and you can see that in your attachments. South wall of the new field house has a surface area of 7,800 square feet in size. The new signage being proposed on that south wall is 752 square feet, or roughly 9.5% of the wall area. Again, this one faces Oakwood Avenue. The north wall of the field house has a surface area of 7,840 square feet, and the new signage being proposed there is 778 square feet, making it roughly 9.9% of the wall area. Again, that one faces County State Aid Highway 27. So the peak of the field house will be 71 feet tall, and that's measured from ground level. The side walls of the building are planned to be 33 feet tall. And for a little bit of scale, the new city recreation center addition is approximately 35 feet tall. The Brown County Courthouse is about 68 feet tall. The elevators at Hanska Farmers Co-op, the ones that just were demoed, are 70 feet tall, so that's about the same height. And then lastly, just for New Ulm's sake, the Herman Monument's about 100 feet tall. So Section 9.14 Subdivision 1AE of the City Code requires that one identification sign not exceeding 30 square feet in area for the following uses: church, hospital, school, sanitarium, club, library, or similar uses. Such signs shall be solely for the purpose of displaying the name of the institution and its activities and services. These signs may be illuminated and may be placed in any front yard, but in no case may be placed in any side yard. The new field house is located approximately 650 feet plus or minus from the entrance of the complex off of Betcher Road. The nearest residences to the field house are approximately 615 feet plus or minus to the northeast, and then 515 feet plus or minus to the south. The building would be approximately 550 feet plus or minus from County State Aid Highway 27 to the north. City zoning ordinance defines the term sign to mean a name, identification, description, display, illustration, or device which is affixed or represented directly or indirectly upon a building, structure, or land in view of the general public, and which directs attention to a product, place, activity, person, institution, or business. The applicant has stated that this type of building being constructed on property is similar to uses that are permitted in the B2 Service Business District in New Ulm. And because they believe it's similar to the B2 uses, that the Planning Commission should consider the B2 sign regulations. If the B2 sign regulations were applied, they would be subject to the following. Excuse me. Section 9.1, Subdivision 1CA of the City Code requires that a total surface area of all business signs on a lot shall not exceed the sum of 2 square feet per lineal foot of lot frontage, or 10% of the building facing area, or 75 square feet in area, whichever is greater. City of New Ulm has recently had a similar sign variance request from the city itself to increase the amount of allowed signage on property beyond 30 square feet. This was for the recreation center addition. The city council's final decision was to allow a total of 302 square feet of signage on that property. If you remember, they had originally requested 700 square feet of signage, and the commission had recommended to reduce that by removing the Vogel Fieldhouse painted sign on the north wall of the building. And that's what their plan is, to move forward with that. So in reviewing other city ordinances regarding institutions or educational facilities located in residential zoning districts or surrounded by residential zoning districts, there are a couple of approaches that are being used. One is to designate a specific maximum amount of allowed signage for the property, similar to what the city has today, but each community again has nuances, including allowing additional signage if the property has more right-of-way frontage. Another approach is to designate a maximum percentage of sign area per wall facing the abutting right-of-way. We reviewed this previously, but St. Cloud allows up to 5% of a wall area abutting a right-of-way to be signage for an institution, educational facility located in a residential district. We did do some research on different field houses for other colleges throughout Minnesota. So for a couple more local examples, MSU Mankato, they do have a field house, but it's more of a dome shape. It doesn't have a peaked roof. They have their MSU logo on both lengths of the building, the entire length of the building. And when I called the city of Mankato to see if it fit into their sign ordinances for the city, they had told me that it was on state property and therefore they didn't have zoning jurisdiction. So that wasn't terribly helpful. But then Gustavus Adolphus, they have the Swanson Tennis Center. What they have for signage there is a small nameplate sign towards the entrance of the building. Reviewed College of St. Benedict, the Clemens Field House. They do have a peaked roof, similar style to what's being proposed here from the college, or what is being constructed by the college. And what they did was they had their signage actually on the inside facing the track that was located on the inside of the building. It's kind of the opposite of what's being proposed here. And then University of Minnesota has a field house, and they just, again, have a small nameplate sign as you enter the building. And then St. John's, the Skalicki Dome, again, just have a small nameplate sign towards the entrance of the building. Again, the city is in the process of updating our zoning ordinance. We are considering different approaches to sign areas for institutions, educational facilities, and other uses in residential districts. So in the future, we're going to likely be able to consider different approaches, but nothing has been adopted to date. City has granted 5 sign variances for institutions or educational facilities located in residential districts since 1977. These variances allowed an increase in square footage beyond the allowed square feet and are as follows. In 2000, Cathedral of the Holy Trinity was allowed an additional sign on the property beyond the one allowed sign per church. So another additional 30 square feet. ISD 88 was allowed to put up a 60-foot electronic reader sign. So they were allowed an additional 30 square feet. MLC College in 2014 were allowed to increase their signage to 38 square feet. Independent School District, again, 88. On Oak Street, the new high school was allowed to put up an 87 square foot sign. And then we have the rec center, who was allowed to put up a total of 302 square feet. There are a couple of alternative actions the Planning Commission might consider. One is to not increase the amount of square footage of signage allowed on the property, or another one would be to just lessen the variance amount. In your packets, we have 5 attachments. We have the variance application. We have the sign plan. Attachment 3 is the site location map. Attachment 4 is the zoning map. And attachment 5 are ground level photos. Staff does believe that the signage being proposed would only be visible to residents or automobiles along Oak Street and County State Aid Highway, Oakwood Avenue and County State Aid Highway 27. Because the size of the field house structure, staff does not believe that the signage would need to be this size if it's in place or necessary for people to locate the field house. Staff would recommend that if there are options to reduce the sign area or locate the signage in a way in a way where it wouldn't be as visible, that we would like that to be considered by the applicant. This site is used as an athletic complex by Martin Luther College, and staff does believe that the field house is consistent with the zoning uses on the property. In the future, again, we're likely to consider different sign ordinance options for institutions and educational facilities, but again, we haven't adopted anything new in our zoning ordinance. I have two recommended conditions here. One is that the applicant shall contact the city building official once all signage on the property is installed to verify compliance with the variance amount that is granted or if it's granted. And then two, any signage above the amount of square feet approved by this variance would necessitate an additional variance. That would conclude the staff report. I believe we have representatives here from both the college and the architectural firm, and I'm sure they'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, John. This is a public hearing. If anybody would like to be heard, please step up to the mic and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Eric Olson. I'm an architect with Olson and Hobby Architects, and I am here tonight with Martin Luther College and for this variance request. I did have a chance to read your report, what you just read, John, and we do have some options and just wanted to make some clarifications, if you will. Some of the comments that were discussed included red lances. Red lances are not part of the logo or part of any sort of branding of the college. They are necessarily, they're branding, or they're banding, not branding. They're banding on the building, just like the gray wainscoting that's on there as well. So one of the items that we would like this commission to take forth is to remove those from the square footage of the count. So I could present some images for that. I don't know if I can plug into anything up here with the PDF or.
Yeah, let me make sure.
Okay. I'll give you that.
Right up here.
There we go.
I've also can control it over here if you know what one you need.
Yep, I know which one I need. It's right there. All right. So how can I?
Rick, you have to actually take the mouse and drag it over, and it'll show.
Oh, gotcha.
Yep.
Like that.
Yep.
All right. I think if I do this, maybe it does that. Perfect. All right. So as John mentioned with the presentation, that we are requesting variance from an RA to a B2 for that signage, because we do believe that this type of building and its location and its use fits more into that signage, code requirement. So with that, and John read what I have up here on the screen too, basically stating that looking at that 10% of the building facing for the signage requirements, and what we presented was less than that. And then also we have on there what the definition of sign means in your zoning ordinance, the identification, description, display, illustration, or device, which directs attention to a product, place, activity, person, institution, or business. And that's, I want to make sure that this group understands that what was brought up as red lances is not part of the logo. It shouldn't be part of the signage. So I do have up the image of what was presented on the south elevation, and I do have one for the north elevation. On the left, we have what was presented and what John described, but then on the right of that, we have the calculation without the red banding, which again, we don't consider that as being part of the signage. That would bring that wall square footage down to 6.7% of that elevation. Can everyone read that and understand the deduction of the red banding? Oh, it's right behind me. Look at this. So yeah, it's removing these to get down to the red banding. When we remove that, it's 529 square feet instead of 702, which is 6.7%. And then on the back side, the red banding had a little bit more square footage because we continued it down here to meet with the gray wainscoting. So once we remove that, it's just the MLC letters. So then we're down to about 3.5% of that wall elevation. So again, considerably less as we were asked to reduce the amount of signage. So that's how we would look at doing that. So with this image of the perspective of how one would enter, once you get into the parking lot, that's really where you see this. You don't see the elevations because there is a lot of trees around Bedecker Avenue, and so it's really hard for neighbors to even see this building 500 to 600 feet set back. So once we remove the banding, we're down to a total of 801 square feet on the south and north elevation, which is a total reduction actually of about 52% from what we submitted. So I guess when we submitted that, we just looked at all of the information that the city asked us to, but really in clarification, those red bands should not be part of the signage. So there's that back image as well. So in discussions too with John, we wanted to share with you other facilities. I know the city did your own research on looking at different signage. This is that Mavericks Dome. That is an MSU. This is very typical of athletic facilities on campuses where they want their logo to be seen and noticed. So you notice on this wainscot, they have purple and the gold. Again, banding, not a logo. Here's another image of a University of Waterloo. They have yellow in their Knight's Head. This is a facility under construction at NDSU. They have the Novak or Nodak Insurance Company as their naming sponsor for this facility, very similar to Betty Cohn on this project. Here's the building that's being constructed is a type of building that Legacy building companies put up. It's a fabric building, and this is another one of their facilities. Here's another one that they've put up with their logos on it. Texas A&M, another Legacy building with their college logos on it. This is a water facility that has waves on it. That's, I would say, considered banding, not necessarily a logo or branding anybody's name. It's just a decorative element. Here's another facility that is a Legacy building, and they just used colors to break up that large building, along with silhouettes of different activities that can go in there, which wouldn't be considered really a logo or a sign. And as many buildings have names and logos and just images of what happens in that facility, it's just part of what these types of buildings are. So that's why we think that it's not really the RA zone, it's more of that B2 zone. So that's why we applied for the variance. So do I have any questions from anyone? Any clarification or comments? Or
I have a question. Are you saying you are going to remove the red lancets or red banding, or we just should avoid considering that?
I am saying that it is not part of the signage, that it's part of the building, so it should not be brought into the signage square footage. Just like the white or the gray or anything else that's on this image, that there's Really, the signage, what we would see is the logo for the college and then the Betty Cone Fieldhouse. That's the signage. So, and with that, we have a total of both sides, 801 square feet.
I guess I have a hard time removing the banding because the way it's presented, it looks like it's incorporated in the sign.
Yeah, that would be my question. Is the banding a standard part of the logo?
No.
So that's
at all.
not what you usually
Could be
see. So-
removed.
Well, we have it there to just break up a big white wall.
Yeah, I see.
Just like we have the gray.
It's a design element.
Coming up because it's a
Right.
big white building.
Except
John pointed
when
out-
I went back and looked at some of the examples that you pointed out
Sure.
as banding, there were like, for instance, the AT&T building that had the two logos on it, and I remember there were a couple others. They did not have additional banding. The logo stood on its own.
Sure.
To me, this appears to be the banding to highlight the logo, which makes it part of the sign, as far as my interpretation of it. And that's the way I would look at it.
I would say that the entire building has banding. We have gray.
Well, if you want to split hairs, yeah,
does. No,
you've
I'm
increased the signage, then yes. And,
But so does this building. This building has tan banding around
Yes.
it,
yes.
so.
But I mean, the zigzag pattern on the exterior of that is very much separates itself from the red banding, which incorporates the red in the lancet helmet and the feathering in the helmet. It is definitely, in my opinion, part of the sign. I would not be able to split that out. And that's my opinion, so.
I guess I kind of look at it and just think that it's like an architectural feature, kind of like the gray. It just defines it and separates the building, and as Mr. Olson stated, you know, it's separating the logo from the sign, but
I think it's highlighting, making it part of, but that's, and it's an opinion.
yeah, it's an opinion.
It's, yeah. Kate, did you have anything else?
Yeah, I have a different question though, so we
Okay,
can
go ahead.
finish
Okay,
this.
go ahead, Ken.
I'm finished.
Any other questions?
Kate, you said you had something?
Actually, it's probably more for John. and-
Okay.
So, the zoning designation is RA. And the suggestion is to use B2 zoning requirements. What, as I read through this, I was trying to understand in an RA, what are the standard ordinance requirements for signage in an RA zone?
It would be 30 square feet.
Okay, that's,
The signage regulations aren't, they're applied by zoning district,
right,
but they're more so they're applied to sometimes the use of the building. So it's not based on zoning. The use of the B2 in for this particular request, in my opinion, is not appropriate. This is RA zone property, so that's what we have to use. We can't pick,
right.
a formula from a different part of the code and bring it in and say, okay, let's use it for this particular piece of property. Can't do
Understood.
that.
Understood. Thanks.
The only way they could change that is if they applied for a variance or requested
No, you would have to change the code.
the code.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, our definition for signage, I think, is pretty broad, and it's pretty clear. And I think in this particular case, what is, the red banding, that's part of the sign. It sits between the actual letters and the logo, and its purpose is to accent those two pieces, and it's part of the sign. And I think our definition of signage supports, my statement.
Dave, for an example, if that building would have it protrude or, outward on those angle or have it inset and it was painted, would you still say that would be signage? Be like an architectural feature if it was structurally there?
I mean, if they attach something to this.
Well, I mean, if it would be cantilevered or offset,
If the
would that be
building,
considered signage?
I think I know where you're going with this, Larry, and that was a thought of mine too. If this was a brick building and the gray was stone and the red banding was buff brick, would that be considered, because it's an architectural feature, would this group still consider that architectural feature part of signage if it was the same look, except the white was brown brick, the red was tan brick, and the gray was stone?
Except it's not.
Except it's not, but I'm asking you, if this whole building looked just like this, except with different materials,
Except it's not.
because what I would do as an architect with doing that, I would use different materials to give the building interest, as many architects would. And because of this type of a building, being a fabric building, I don't have that opportunity. So it would have been just a big white box with a pitched roof. So we add architectural elements through the different colors, which would be stone or brick using different colors. So that's how we did it with this building, in that same sense, or that same context.
And I say you've accomplished that with the gray and the white part of the lower half of the building. However, you have, in my opinion, incorporated the lancets or the red banding, I'm going to call them lancets, in part of the sign, not as an architectural feature.
I would agree.
Because it very much
It looks very
frames the,
cohesive.
and I agree architecturally, the lancets do come down with the lines of the roof, and it carries along the lines of the building, but it also is placed there to draw your eye directly to that, and it is part of the sign. I guess I have to stick with that. Do they have to be there? If you're saying that they're not part of the logo, or and in my opinion, if they weren't there, it would not, the signage, the other signage is just as noticeable if they weren't there.
I think if they were not there, the building wouldn't be as interesting. I think they help, because we have a 70-foot peak. We
Yeah.
have a 32-foot sidewall, 31-foot sidewall. They help break up that white. And that was the purpose of them in the first place, is to help bring that scale and that to a human scale, which is right here.
Right?
Were you, as you were designing this, were you aware of the ordinances around signage?
Well, I was aware that I could only have a 5x6 sign, and that no matter what we did, because we presented it to some of the city staff a year and a half ago, and had this concept. And so whatever we did, we would be here today. So.
Sure.
Just because of the RA. And again, that's why there's not much room with that. And as it was quoted in the paper, that your group is looking at revisiting, it was brought up tonight, the sign ordinance and some of these areas, so.
Any further discussions? Anybody else in the audience have anything that you'd like to add? Yep, please step up to the mic and state your name and address for the record, please.
I am Scott Schmodlock, Vice President for Administration at Martin Luther College. And I would just like to echo what Eric said. In the very beginning, when we began the planning and we looked at a building that was 70 feet tall at the peak and starting with a blank canvas and it's completely white, he said, we've got to do something to break this thing up because it's a lot of white, including the roof. And that's exactly what the red and the gray accomplishes in the building, is it breaks it up. So it doesn't just look, unattractive in any regard. And there's only so much you can do when you're working with this kind of a surface, as opposed to painting on it or using some architectural strategy. So in that regard, I can verify that that's exactly the reason for it, to break it up, to make it look less of an eyesore. Bear in mind, if you are, living in the area, you would rather look at something that's appealing to you than something that looks vastly white and obviously, maybe not as well thought out, artistically. So that, and, the very fact it's called the Betty Cone Fieldhouse is, originally it was the Knight Center back in the day when we first probably presented this. And that's because the donor very much wanted to make this a tribute in memory to his wife who passed away. So that increased our signage area a little bit too. But I would just encourage that we consider leaving in the red banding as well as the other parts of the signage. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Scott.
One other issue that I think you need to consider, and that is precedence. I mean, we have other institutions in town, and we have to treat them all the same when it comes to something like signage. So if we decide that 1,500 square feet is appropriate, then I think, New Ulm Public Schools, NUACs, there are the hospital, there's other institutions that then, should qualify for this type of signage allowance. And then I think you need to consider what kind of, is that visually what we want within the community?
Dave, are we going to take into consideration for architectural features then that could be painted, to match the colors of their logo or?
Well, I
Things.
think, we can only go with what the code says. We've got a definition, and I might add that the definition is fairly standard to ones I've seen in other ordinances. So I don't think we're an outlier there. And we've got certain square footage amount. I think the decision with the rec center kind of establishes a square footage amount. If we want to go higher, then I really think we need to change the code rather than continue giving variances.
Dave, you spoke of precedences. Are not the five things listed here variances that we have granted already? Cathedral, the Holy Trinity, ISD 88, the college once before, that did exceed these limits?
It did exceed the 30-foot limit.
Okay,
That was,
right. And just for clarification, we're not asking to exceed the 30-foot in the RH, we're asking to use other zone parameters to apply instead? No?
No, the request is to have a total of 1,545 and a half square feet of signage in the RA zoning district. We can't, through a variance application, we can't necessarily change the zoning that we're applying.
Got it.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else in the audience like to be heard or speak on behalf of this? I'll look at closing the public hearing and then doing further discussion amongst the commissioners and staff.
I tend to understand what they're saying, but I also think sometimes things are architecturally designed also. I can point to many buildings in Walm that trouble me. I don't think that building would be any less attractive without the red banding on it. In fact, I think that the helmet, the Trojan head, would be more noticeable without the red banding. As a neighbor, if I was looking at it out my window, I would, one way or another, say, that building really needs some red, the banding. I don't think if it was missing and it was put up, people would notice. So.
Eric, go ahead.
Can I make a statement?
Yeah.
Just as an option, as it was stated, the red banding was placed there to break it up. What if that was another color? What if that was gray? No.
It's part of the sign, because it's there and it's isolated from the zigzaggy entire thing of the building. No, it's definitely part of the sign.
I don't think it's part of the sign because I think early on they stated today that they're not using it in their current logo. They have their knight and, it's not like it's on their letterhead,
Then
defining
why
it.
wouldn't they just put their logo on the building?
They have the knight there. But yeah, but I mean, they're not using
So that's an
the
option, I
zig-
guess,
the cross,
is we
but-
would be open to making the color the same as the color below, the gray color. So, thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Well, we have to vote on what we have, whether they change color or not. Is that correct or not correct, Dave? Are we?
If you remember, the deadline for a decision on this one is September 12th.
Yeah.
All right.
Variance. Yep. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, my name is Jim Unke. I'm the athletic director at Martin Luther College. There is no other place that there is any banding with our logo. It has nothing to do with the Knight's Head. It was created by Eric to break up the wall. And to say that, with Eric's suggestion, what if you make them gray? Well, then you're matching the rest of the building. I don't get how it becomes part of the sign or part of the logo. It isn't. I'm a passionate guy, and that's our logo. It's everywhere, and there are no banding, crosses, lances, whatever you want to call it. It is the Knight's Head. That's who we are. And so this is Eric's mindset to break up a 70-foot wall. I think if I were a neighbor looking out there and I'd see this white 70-foot wall with 33-foot sidewalls, that is something that I prefer not to look at. But as you look at the design, I think it's extremely well done, and I've told Eric that it is perfect for what we do. There is no other building in this town that is made of this material, that has this purpose, and it's going to serve the community across the board. It's not just a Martin Luther College building. It's going to have golf simulators in there. Our whole community will be using it in January and February. All the golfers. Our New Ulm Youth Soccer is already calling to rent space on the turf. I mean, it is going to have this wide appeal, so let's make it a nice-looking building. There is nothing to compare it to. All of the regulations and everything else, I get, and I love New Ulm for that reason. But let's not be stuck in the mud. This is a brand-new building with a brand-new purpose and a brand-new approach to things. Let's have a brand-new approach to things. I'm sorry. I get carried away with stuff. That's what I do. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from staff in regards to this?
I have one more
Or-
question.
Go ahead, Kate.
So if we considered the banding not part of the signage, we're talking about, what did you say, how many square feet total in signage?
801.
And we still are working with 30?
Either way, the 801 is just one, one part of it, and then we have the other little signage.
So if we change that interpretation, don't they have to reappear with a different,
We would have to grant a variance, is if
not in this, they would have to reapply?
we're going to allow the,
We have till September 12th, and it's not what's
I
proposed
guess
then.
what,
Because
run the
he's
question
proposing
again.
something other than what they
So,
applied for, correct?
I think it would be within your prerogative if you wanted to say that you don't consider the banding to be part of or covered by the definition of sign. I think you can do that, as part of your motion or, the action that you take.
Would simply doing that, Dave, bring this request within an acceptable limit to the staff or according to code, or does it still exceed by too much to consider it approval?
We'd still be looking at 801 square feet of signage.
Right, that's above and beyond the, what is supposed to be 30.
30, yeah.
Yeah. So bands or not bands, lines or no lines, it's still beyond.
I mean, we approved 300 square feet additional for the rec center.
Mhm.
Size-wise, square footage-wise, building size,
The rec center is 35 feet tall,
and this is twice as tall.
71.
twice the size. Situation, we don't
It
have
is a
any,
unique situation, and I understand that some of the examples that I looked at, too, banding or no banding, it's still a big building, and if they made those gray instead of red, it would not be architecturally as attractive. I think it would drab down the side of the building. That's the other thing that makes me think it's part of the sign, because it's highlighting it.
sure.
So rather than gray, I'm concerned about the overall consideration of the size.
Mr. Dalton?
Chris Dalton, City Manager, and Dave and John, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but you as the Planning Commission actually recommended to City Council all the initial signage that we had on the building, including the Vogel Fieldhouse, and that was about 700 square feet.
Which,
At the Fieldhouse, the new signage, so you approved about 700 square feet, and we as the city decided to paint over the Vogel at that council meeting, but you did approve 700, so this is about 100 square feet more
Yeah.
than that.
And then at council, we chose to lessen it again.
That is
So,
correct.
based off today,
we had the
we're gonna make a
understanding, though, that was coming off. Because they did say that part of this was, they were working on, and they had talked to.
They were talking to the
Ann,
donor.
The donor, and that they were okay with removing that whole thing. And that was stated in the meeting.
But it was a current sign.
It was a current sign, but we voted with the understanding, I think most of us had the understanding that was being painted over. Or something
Well,
was being reduced.
It was being discussed,
Yeah.
on those options.
Just for clarification, everyone, what we brought to the city council was that the planning commission had recommended 302 square feet. That is what the original proposal was, 700 square feet by the New Ulm Rec Center.
Yeah. But at that meeting, Tom Schmitz told us that he was going to
Take
paint it
that
over.
Yes, it was my understanding anyway, that was
Yeah.
acceptably coming off the building to reduce the amount of signage.
But we had a
We did
motion,
not include it in the motion, though.
but we had it on the motion for
Yeah.
700
It was not included, yeah, okay.
square feet, today. So, we have a little work to do possibly for the future to consider for our zoning updates, and what do we,
I agree.
and,
Yeah, if
know,
if
'cause-
they want the agricultural zoning, the lesser zoning and the business zoning, then
yeah.
that's what they have.
Yeah, but we're here today and
Yes.
we have to make a recommendation for council in regards. So I'd be looking for
Motion?
a motion.
Just a reminder that this isn't an all or none. I mean, you can
Yeah.
come up with a square footage amount that is somewhere in between as well. You just can't exceed the requested amount.
So Dave, by stating that, you might be saying that we could ask for the Betty Cohen Fieldhouse lettering to be smaller or the night symbol to be smaller. Is that what?
Well, I think it would maybe be more appropriate to say you can have this much square footage and then let them decide what's appropriate. That would be an option that you could take.
So the city rec center has we approved 700 square feet. Is that what it ended up being?
Ultimately, the city council approved 302 square feet.
Approved what?
302 square feet.
302 square feet. This building is basically twice as high. So I hate to give you 600 square feet, which is almost an insult to what you're asking, but I don't.
Eric, question with the signage. How did you determine what size lettering did you want to put on the building? Were you looking for a certain distance for identifying it? For like a scale, to put it onto a scale?
Absolutely. There are guidelines for how you view letters from a certain distance. Therefore, the Betty Cohen Fieldhouse was scaled to see from about 600 feet to, it's still small. Because this is right about at the corner of the parking lot, so the entrance would be twice as far back coming in. Then the MLC on this side was scaled to see from a greater distance, way across the fields, just so that you'd see MLC from Martin Luther College. So it was scaled for that. And so this image shows us closer because of the rendering, but from the distance from what you would see it traveling on the other side, is that Highway 27?
Yes.
So you could see MLC from that distance.
Let me ask you the question, Eric. If this building was not out in the middle of a field right now, and it was going to be closer to other buildings and more
Right.
thing, or roads nearby, would you have smaller signage?
There's
Considering.
the signage, kind of depending on where it is and how you view it, potentially, yes, potentially. The building placement and the building size is, always a factor in how an architect would look at detailing or designing an exterior. So scale is important here, and it's, again, a very tall building. And trying to bring that 70 foot, 71 feet down in scale by doing what we did, we thought it worked well. And in trying to create an attractive building, in our eyes, we think we succeeded, so.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you built the building with certain intentions for use is why this size it is, with the height and
Absolutely.
length and width.
Yeah, the building is.
That's kind of out of your control.
Correct.
You just needed to try to meet the uses,
Correct,
hence trying to get the signage.
so.
Okay.
You know, if I remember when we were talking with Tom Schmitz about the rec center signage, that was brought to the planning commission after the fact. The signage was all up. If he referenced an architectural oversight, that it hadn't occurred when it should have occurred in the building process. If that project would have come to this commission before all of the signage was up, we would be having the same discussion about that building, right?
And I think, Kate, there was also a reference that we couldn't find it on record when the Vogel was approved for that signage on the side of the building. The painted sign.
I think it was
It was
done
like
before.
late 70s, and there was no record of that ever being, filed for a signage.
So I guess my point is that we felt as though our hands were a little bit tied when that information came to the planning commission, because it already was a done deal.
And then ultimately, the council lessened it,
Right.
Right.
Eric, just for clarification, if you could, thank you. So the 801 is what the total square footage would be if you removed theoretically the red bands from both ends of the building.
Correct. What we would say is true signage with the logo on the south side in Betty Cone Fieldhouse and on the north side with MLC. The north side is 272 square feet with that look, the lettering, and that's a rectangle. That's not the actual black letters, so that's a rectangle. And that's the same thing with the night head. It's a box. So in other municipalities, we're able to take some of the white away from that square footage. But as you see here, we incorporated it. So 24 by 27 is what gave us that. So there is some fluff in that number. But correct, both of those stated without the red banding is 801.
Okay.
I just want to remind the commission that we had this discussion previously with Taco John's and the way that the city approaches the measurement of those types of things.
That's correct.
It's consistent.
That's correct,
Yes.
yep. Because we were going to stay with the block.
Right.
I think it's safe to say we're all wrestling with the urge to honor the code and yet also be reasonable. I'm not saying this is a perfect proposal, but just to keep things moving, we've done a lot of discussing here. We need to come up with something. I'm going to propose that we approve a variance to not exceed the 801. And whether they decide to shrink things down, remove the red, then at least that would be,
1539, or
Say-
1530. 1530 total, because it's 801 for...
plus the 729 on the back. Okay,
Isn't that your proposal? No.
No,
No, is
okay,
it
well, that's-
801 for both?
Okay.
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 Yeah,
On
all
his
right.
diagram there, it's in the middle diagram for 801. I guess the only thing I would have a question yet would be, do we need to worry about the other sign that's on the street yet to be included in the signage?
I'm assuming you guys are planning on
That-
keeping an entrance sign there, right?
The entrance sign will look and feel and just exactly how it is, except tennis court.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's going to be the same, it's just going to be removed, added tennis courts, and that's it.
Yeah, I just, if we offer a
Right.
motion at 801 and we
Sure.
have the other sign,
Understood.
and
I
I-
also am wrestling with the B2 to R.
Well, we can't do that.
Yeah.
No, and
We
we're
can't
not,
do
we're
that,
not
so
considering
that's-
that. I'm just making a proposal that's somewhere in between 30 feet, which is obviously way too small for something like this, and the clearly a much larger number that's been proposed, or what we were originally looking at. So as Dave had pointed out, this is perhaps a compromise, a somewhere in between number. Anyone can certainly propose to change that, but that's my proposal at this time.
do we have a motion on the table? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion on the motion?
As long as no additional banding be added by saying it's not, I mean, that's not really, it's part of the discussion. I want it to be considering all changes to the signage. 801, or are you going,
Well, we have 801 that's on the building. I don't know, was it 15
15 and a half.
15 and a half?
square feet for the signage?
140 total?
Well, he said 15 and a half, so that puts us at 816 and a half here. If we just say 820 to round it up,
I'd agree to that.
Could live with that.
Okay.
No, I guess I can't go with that, but call for a vote, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm still, it's a
Well-
lot.
well, we have a motion and a second to approve 820 square feet of signage for the variance for MLC. All signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Aye.
So we'll call a roll. So
Okay, Commissioner Firth,
Aye.
Commissioner Sellner,
Aye.
Commissioner Earl,
Opposed?
Commissioner Mako,
Opposed?
Commissioner Mack.
aye.
Okay, so the motion carries on a 3-2 vote.
This will go, Eric, this will go to our next council meeting, which should be September 7th. And, thank you. Item 3.2 is to consider the application of Tim Cordis requesting a variance to allow a 10-foot by 12-foot accessory structure to be located 6 feet from the side property line on property zoned R1, single-family resident district at 1827 North Jefferson Street. We'll look for staff report.
Thank you. Legal description for this property is Lot 5 and Lot 6, Block 163 north of Center Street. Street address is 827 North Jefferson, and the property is generally located between 18th and 19th North on the west side of North Jefferson Street. So it's just south of the Brown County Highway Department's garage out there. The deadline for decision is October 8th, 2021. The comprehensive plan designates this area as low-density residential. Surrounding uses are low-density residential to the south, east, and west, and then public, semi-public to the north, which would be the highway department. Zoning designation is R1, the single-family zoning district. Surrounding zoning is R1 to the north, south, east, and west. Currently, the site is used as a single-family residence. Current area uses include residential to the southeast and west, and then the highway department to the north. Public hearing was published in the Journal on August 14th, 2021, and to date, we have not had any comments regarding this application. The property owner is proposing to construct a 10 by 14 foot long storage shed, 6 feet from the north property line. Should note this is slightly different than what you had in your packets. In your packets, you had 10 by 12. The applicant asked that we increase that size to 10 by 14. It wouldn't go any closer to the property line. Staff did verify that with the city attorney to see if that was allowed with this request, and he thought that this would not change the scope of the request and that the Planning Commission should consider the 6-foot setback request. The property owner has stated that the purpose of this shed is to house his UTV or utility terrain vehicle. The property owner is proposing to place this shed on his existing driveway just north of the existing attached garage. And you can see attachment 5, the ground level photos actually show the UTV that I believe the property owner owns in the location where the shed is being proposed. There is a retaining wall to the north and west of where the shed is being proposed. The property owner has stated that because he has no alley access to his backyard, and because of the county owns the property to the north, that it is not feasible to locate the shed in his backyard. Property dimensions are 100 feet in width and 175 feet in depth. The property is located again in the R1 Single Family Residence District, which requires a 10-foot side yard setback for any structure. The applicant has stated that the shed will be placed on the concrete pad and will be on skids. He also has told us in the variance application that he intends to have the shed color match the house. Staff did ask the applicant if he had asked the Brown County Highway Department to allow an access easement to access his backyard, and he did not believe the county would grant him that easement to cross the property, especially for the purpose of installing something like a gravel base or driveway or something like that to get back there. The requirements for a variance approval are outlined in state statute, and those standards are listed on the second page of the city's variance application. Specifically, the variance requirements for approval ask if there are circumstances unique to the property that necessitate the need for a variance. This question is typically related to physical features on the property, such as a steep slope, a ravine, water features, or those types of things. It is staff's opinion that in the backyard, there are not unique features on the property. I should note, though, that on the front yard, there is that steep slope right next to his garage, where there is a very tall retaining wall. There are some alternative actions that we'd like the Planning Commission to consider. One is that you could not allow the reduced side yard setback, or two is you could lessen the variance amount. There are 5 attachments. 1 is the variance application. 2 is the map showing the location of the property. 3 is a zoning map. 4 is a site plan. 5 is the ground level photographs. It is our opinion that there aren't unique circumstances on this property that necessitate the need for variance, as there are some level ground in the backyard, and it doesn't have water features. But keep in mind, landowner doesn't have access to that backyard across, unless he was to cross other properties. The purpose of the proposed detached shed is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and the use of the property, and the placement of this shed does not change the essential character of the neighborhood, as this site will continue to be used for residential purposes. If approved, the staff would recommend one condition: one, that the applicant shall locate the boundaries and verify the location of the accessory structure on the site with city staff prior to the placement of that structure. And that concludes the staff report. And the applicant is here. If you have any questions, I'm sure he'd be willing to answer them.
Thank you, John. Any discussion? Or questions?
John, this county or the highway department property there is completely enclosed in a chain link fence, is it not? Is
I
there?
don't believe so on the
Bordering?
applicant's side. Oh, would you?
So there is some fencing there.
Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Tim
please?
Cordis in New Ulm here. Annie, the chain link fence comes up to the edge of my property line. And with regards, there's also a gas line that goes right along there. So that's another thing that would probably keep them from allowing me to put a driveway across that.
Okay, and there's a lot of tree placement, so it's like you couldn't put it on the other side and like basically install another driveway. I don't know how far your property goes to the south side.
There are the utility lines on that side. For me, there's a gas line for my house and everything on there. So it would be difficult to put one there.
Yeah, I think it would be kind of hard to put an easement in from the county side.
I guess my question to staff would be, are we okay with the front yard setback yet? We're outlined okay because he's far enough from the road for that, so we only have to deal with the...
And this is totally encompassed on the existing driveway, is that not correct? The
Correct.
driveway's there, and this is sitting completely on the driveway pad that is there. And there's a drop off there on the other side there, but the retaining wall you have. Yeah, okay. So.
My opinion, we've granted them before in the past for side yard setbacks. I don't see any issues with granting it, but
I would make a motion to allow the 10 by 14 building with a recommendation from the city.
I'd second that.
so we have a motion and a second to grant the 10 by 14 as recommendation from the city is motion. Any further discussion? I'll signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. This will go to the September 7th meeting, Tim. Item 3.3 is to consider the application of Kyle Rhodes on behalf of Dunlar Construction applicant and Russell Eckelholm on behalf of the State of Minnesota Department of Military Affairs owner, requesting a conditional use permit to place a specialty purpose fence on the property legally described as Lot 1, Block 1, Palmer Addition. The street address of the property is 2100 Palmer Avenue. Look for staff report.
Okay, this parcel of property is generally located west of the airport and south of US Highway 14. Deadline for a decision on this matter is September 24th, 2021. Land use plan for the city as a designation of business for this property. Surrounding land use designations in the comprehensive plan. To the north, we have business and airport. To the west, business. To the south, business and industry. And to the east, the airport. The zoning designation is B2, which is Service Business District. Surrounding zoning is to the north is B3 and RA. To the west is in Brown County, as to the south. And both of the properties in those areas are zoned A1, which is agriculture. To the east, the property is zoned RA, which is also agricultural residence district. The current site land use, the Minnesota National Guard is constructing a vehicle maintenance shop on the property. Area land uses are to the north, Menards and airport safety zones. To the west and south is farmland, and to the east is the New Ulm Airport. A notice has been provided to all property owners within 350 feet of the subject property and was published in the New Ulm Journal on August 14th, 2021. As of August 23rd, 2021, we had received no comments on this request. The project description. The city's fence regulations are found in Section 914, Subdivision 6 of the City Code. The fence regulations allow electric, barbed wire, special purpose fences, and fences taller than the height limitations established in this subdivision only with a conditional use permit. In the past, it has been customary to consider barbed wire fences as special purpose fences. I guess in the future, we may have to designate them a little bit more according to what's in the code. A field maintenance shop is defined as a regionally located maintenance shop that provides maintenance to vehicles and equipments from armories in a specific geographic area. Some information I saw said typically 5 to 6 armories would or could send their equipment to a field maintenance shop. The applicant provided the following information on their request. The National Guard requires a section of barbed wire fence along the top edge of the fence. So the fence in total is 8 feet in height. 7 feet of that is chain link. The top foot is a 3-strand barbed wire. The barbed wire fence in question is over 750 feet away from the road being US Highway 14, and will have minimal visual impact or impact on other properties. The purpose of the fence is to protect persons in the area. Inside the fence are large military vehicles, and people need to be kept out. The building has been placed to the south end of the site, downhill, and is screened by plantings and a berm. The existing National Guard facility at 1523 South Washington Street has a storage area with a similar fencing arrangement. You should see attachment 5 for a photograph of that. And finally, the New Ulm Public Utilities Commission has an electric substation, which is in that same block. Their address is 1525 South State Street, and the substation also has a similar fencing arrangement. And in one of the photographs in attachment 5, you can kind of see the PUC's fencing arrangement as well. Required findings. In order to recommend approval of the permit, the commission will need to determine that the request complies with the conditions required for the granting of a conditional use permit. The reverse side of the application lists these 7 conditions and the applicant's response to them. An 8th question asks, why should the city approve your request? And the applicant's response was as follows: the barbed wire fence is required for the safe and secure operation of this facility. Attachments, we have 5 of them. Attachment 1 is the application. Attachment 2 is the site location map. Attachment 3 is the zoning map. Attachment 4 is the site map. And attachment 5 are the ground level photographs of the property, as well as the current National Guard facility on South Washington Street. Staff would recommend approval of the request for the following reasons. The request complies with conditions required for the granting of a conditional use permit. Secondly, the National Guard has similar fencing arrangements at their current facility at 1523 South Washington Street. And 3, the vehicles and equipment being stored within the fenced area require a higher level of security and protection. We have 4 conditions. Those are, number 1, the applicant will pay the cost to record the permit with the Brown County Recorder's Office. 2, the fence will be installed in the location shown on attachment 4. 3, the fence height and amount of barbed wire fencing installed will be as described in the conditional use permit application. And 4, if there is a change in ownership or occupancy of the applicant's property at 2100 Palmer Avenue, the installed fence will be brought into compliance with city fence regulations with 3 months of the change. And I might note that last condition is one that we did employ in another location in New Ulm. And then 2 motions are provided, one to approve and one to deny the request.
Thank you, Dave. Any discussion?
I think it stands on its own. It's no different than they have existing within the city proper right now. That at least is out in the country and away from children. And but I understand the need for the fence, and it's government property. So
Yeah.
I would agree.
I would make a motion to approve with the 4 stated conditions the city set forth.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Everybody signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Now we will go to item 4.1, consider the approval of the final plot of Maha's 3rd edition.
In this particular case, the applicant is Jerry and Carol Minders. The property owner are the Minders and Roger and Carol Lindholm. The legal description is Lot 1 and 2, Block 1, Maha's 2nd edition. Street address is 1727 to 1729 Oakwood Avenue. The property is generally located south of Oakwood Avenue, north of Center Street, and east of Betker Road. The deadline for a decision on this request is October 10th, 2021. The current land use designation for the property is low-density residential, and that's the land use designation that surrounds the property. Current zoning is R1, single-family residence district, and that's the common zoning classification that surrounds the property along with some RA property. Current site use, we have 2 single-family dwellings, and we have single-family dwellings surrounding the property as well as MLC athletic facilities to the north. Notice, none is required, and we have received no public comments to date. We have utilities in Oakwood Avenue to serve the property. Comprehensive plan does not designate a park within the platted area. The area to be platted consists of 2 existing lots, and this property has flat areas to the north and east and steep hillside to the west and south. Located on each lot is a single-family dwelling with an attached garage, and then located on the existing lot 2 are 2 detached sheds. Shed 1 has a total building area of 308 square feet, and Shed 2 has 720 square feet. The owners of Lot 2 wish to sell Shed number 1 to the owner of Lot 1. This transaction requires the extension of the rear property line of Lot 1 to the south to include Shed number 1. This also requires the platting of the property. The amount of property being transferred from Lot 2 to Lot 1 is 3,222 square feet. The approximate dimensions of the transferred parcel are 20 feet by 163 feet to 168 feet because of a curve and or a slant in one of the property lines. Current subdivision requirements and proposed dimensions are provided, and you can see that the 2 new lots meet the city's requirements for lot area, lot width, and lot depth. The lot depth for the new Lot 1 is 115 feet, and a variance was granted for that in the past. We had 3 conditions. The first was to pay the platting fee of $210. That payment has been made. The second was to provide an electronic file of the plat in an AutoCAD or newer format. That notice was provided to the land surveyor. And the third was to receive rear and side yard setback variances, and those variances were approved at the City Council's August 3rd meeting. We also included a recommendation to the owner, and the owner has not included the adjoining parcel of property in the plat. I'd like to follow up on that. The owner, which is the Lindholms, have been out of town. And so Mr. Lindholm, Dr. Lindholm, got home and opened up the envelope with this information and then called me. That was yesterday. So he was going to consider it, and he was going to call the land surveyor. Land surveyor had indicated that there would be some cost associated with making this change, and it may very well be that from the cost does not warrant the addition of that lot to the plat. So, but he was going to find out about that and then make a decision. 2 attachments, the final plat and the aerial photograph of the property. And staff would recommend approval since it complies with city code requirements. There are no recommended conditions, and there are 2 motions provided.
Thank you, Dave. Any further discussion? I'd look for a motion.
I can make that motion to approve the final plat.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the final plot of Maha's third edition as presented. Any other discussion? All signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item 5, status of revisions to the zoning ordinance. John?
Thanks. I know this is the one item you always look forward to at the end of your planning commission meeting. So some notable items to be completed for us are Chapter 2, the application reviews and procedures, and then Chapter 11, nonconformities, and then Chapter 12, enforcement. They have been sent to the city attorney for review. In fact, we just yesterday reviewed those with the city attorney, are making some final tweaks, let's call it, and then it will be sent to the planning commission for your review. So that'll be 3 more chapters coming your way. Chapter 3, zoning districts, has been approved by the city attorney, so there'll be an additional one that'll be coming your way. Items that we do have in process, staff will have sent Chapter 4, residential zoning districts, to the city attorney for his review by the time of this meeting today. You can see this report on the 26th here. We're almost to that point of sending it to the city attorney. So we haven't quite got him to Chapter 4 yet. Items we intend to complete within the next month. We do intend to complete that review of Chapter 2 and 4 with the city attorney, finalize that, and forward those chapters to the planning commission. Staff will complete its evaluation and forward to the city attorney for his review Chapters 5, commercial zoning districts, Chapter 6, industrial zoning districts, Chapter 7, special purpose districts, Chapter 8, overlay zoning districts, and Chapter 9, uses. So we will be very busy in the next month doing that. The planning commission and staff will schedule a work session at the time and date that is to be determined yet.
Yeah, if we can, let's just talk about that briefly. We want to schedule something in the, whenever we can get you together and for a work session is, I guess, what we would term it. And it would just be to look at, I think at this time, maybe 3 or 4 of the chapters that we previously talked about. We'd like to get 2 done, and so that we can review that at the same time. So then the question comes up, date and times that work best for you. I guess I'd like to, if we can kind of narrow it down a little bit. We can meet virtually anytime. I assume that mornings or noons or afternoons, any of those, again, work for us. But is it afternoons best for you? Is that a safe assumption, or?
I'm open any.
This is preferable, yeah.
Afternoons are preferable for.
Dave, what duration of
pretty
time are you
flexible.
thinking?
Well, I think it depends really on how many questions and comments the commission has. That's probably what's going to drive the length of the meeting.
Is it like is this a 4-hour work session or a 2-hour?
No, at most 2. We're going to quit once we reach 2 hours.
Thank you, because my brain would not sustain much more.
So we should look to try to schedule something in the afternoon, preferably.
Is there a day that works better for, I'm pretty flexible, but
Pretty open.
Yeah.
Pretty open.
Okay.
When are you thinking? Like, are we into September or October? When are you thinking?
I'm thinking we should be able to get Chapter 2 finished by the first part of next week.
Yeah.
So I would be looking at the latter part of next week or the week after that. And what we can do is we'll send out a doodle poll.
Yeah.
What time would you like to start? Is 4:30 a good time, or is 4 o'clock? Would that work, or what?
I'm flexible. Whatever works.
3:30, 4 o'clock.
Yeah, I think
But
that sounds
it's
good.
not next week, it's the week after?
What's that?
Not next week?
Well, the tail end of next week, we could.
So you're thinking like the 2nd?
I could do this. I didn't realize you were talking that, like, next week.
Well, what we'll do is, again, send out a doodle poll, and we'll give you about maybe 8 dates and try to
Great.
figure something. Now, what we were thinking is that since it's important to start this review process, is that if we can get 5 people, we're going to meet.
Okay.
I hope
Yeah.
that would be acceptable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Some key dates that might be of interest to you is the new zoning ordinance document is to be received by the city council at their December 2021 meeting. So you can see kind of the timeline that we're working with, only really kind of a few months here. The Planning Commission public hearing on the new zoning ordinance to be held will be held on either December 15th or 16th of December 2021. So it's a Wednesday or a Thursday. A completed copy of the new zoning ordinance will be available by December 3rd, 2021 for your review.
Now, the public hearing date for the Planning Commission, I guess we're hopeful that we can get 5 people, or 4 people available for a meeting. We're making that assumption.
Okay, thank you, Dave. And John? Now for 6.2, Heritage Preservation Commission activities. Elwood.
We had one design review come forward, the old Melges Bakery, replacing the cedar shakes on the south side with a shingle look-alike. That was approved. That was it.
Okay. Thank you, Elwood.
Yep.
Dave?
Yeah, why don't we cover the Planning Commission items too
Okay.
at this time? So at the August 3rd City Council meeting, they unanimously approved with 2 conditions, the side and rear yard setback variance for the Lindholms. They also unanimously approved with 6 conditions, the application of John Gogg on behalf of JMG Reynolds, Inc., and that was for the retail sale of appliances and other various items at 1500 North Front Street. And we did add a 6th condition at the city council meeting, and that was that no more than 10% of the building could be used for retail sales. Sometimes, if you're not real specific, someone could take that conditional use permit, and if it doesn't limit the size of the retail area, they could have turned a whole building into retail sales. And obviously, that's something that we didn't want. We wanted it to be part. So I wasn't worried so much about John Gogg as I am the next possible owner of that building.
Correct.
So that's why we made that recommendation. Unanimously approved with 6 conditions, the application of Michael and Sheila Hauk on behalf of Wenninger Travel, and that's for the property at 1314 South Front Street for their travel agency. Approved with 3 conditions, a preliminary plat of Maha's 3rd edition. We've talked about that. At the August 17th meeting, they established a joint airport zoning board, and that body has jurisdiction over airport zoning issues. Consists of 5 members, 2 appointed by the city council, 2 appointed by the county board. And then the 4 members meet and they select a chair for the group. And then they consider, zoning issues for the airport. And at the end of each runway, there are safety zones and there are other airport zones that exist. And so this body kind of establishes those, and then if there are requests for variances, So as you get further out, sometimes there are properties that, for whatever reason, may not comply with the lot area requirements or with other standards that are in place. And so this board considers those kind of requests. That would take care of it.
Thank you, Dave. With no further business, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
You bet.